I believe some people err in their approach to karate and fool themselves into a false sense of ability, martial maturity, and depth of knowledge by intimidating the old man's way without ever passing through the refiner's fire of the young man's way. These are your words?
Apparently, yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to the Okinawa Karate Podcast. I am Josh Simmers, coming to you from the birthplace of karate, Okinawa, Japan. I'm back here once again with my guest, Sensei Jason Perry. Today we're sitting at his home, and we're going to do a formal interview again about and discussion about a book that he wrote. This is following up our training at Mr. Mike Giesecke's dojo. Sensei Mike Giesecke was so kind to let us train there. And you'll see future videos. We've since trained there again. For another project that we're working on. But today we're going to discuss the book that we teased you about, An Old Man's Way, and Sensei Perry is the author of this book. It is a book primarily about his father, but I'll tell you that it's all-encompassing of his family, of his the Perry family, and I enjoyed the book, not only because I know some of the people in the book, but I enjoyed the book from a martial arts perspective, and it actually was not at all what I thought the book was going to be about. Before I read the book, I knew about your father's background in strictly martial arts,
Right.
his style that he trains in. So I thought the book was going to be that,
Right.
you know. I was surprised when I got into it and learned about your family, about your father's upbringing, and then about your family. And I was drawn into different characters in the book, if you will. Right?
It's full of them, right?
It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It is full of them.
Yes.
The main. The
main character being one of them, right?
The main subject, some stories in there. My gosh, a different time in America.
That's right.
A different time in the military, and a different time in Okinawa. But it is
it's all PG rated. There.
It's all PG rated. It's all PG rated. But it is a book that I would recommend reading. You're not going to learn secrets of Okinawa karate, because they're not going to be in any book anyway. If you see a book that tells you that, don't buy it. But you're going to learn about an individual that journeyed through martial arts and had an interesting upbringing and some interesting chapters in his life. It's probably the only martial arts book I've read that almost made me cry. Believe it or not, there was a part in the book that it kind of hit me. But we'll dig into that a little bit more. Perry Sensei, thank you so much for inviting me into your home today, letting me sit down
thank
here.
You. Appreciate you coming.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Kick off to 2021.
That's right.
My first sit-down interview of the year. Let's dig into it.
That's right. We're not that far into the year. So.
Not January 3rd. Sunday, January 3rd.
Aquí más kilometros gozaimasu. That's right.
Let's hear about the old man's way.
Well, yeah. So first of all, I appreciate just the time. I know these things aren't easy to pull together, and then just the fact that you want to talk about the book. I appreciate it, and then the kind words there, and always impresses me how the Okinawa Karate Podcast just rolls off your tongue, Josh. That's I'm always impressed by that. I get choked up.
If there's one thing I can try to be good at in life, that's
there you go.
But I do say karate in the English terms, not karate.
Yeah, but at least you're consistent.
I think it rolls better.
Yeah, I think you're right. At least you're consistent. I do have a little bit, as a Japanese speaker, I do have a little bit of a pet peeve with people. I don't have a problem with people saying karate, but it's when they say it's not karate, it's karate.
Yep.
See, and then I go, wait a minute, I'm not sure we traded one for the other there, which is worse. So anyway.
And that's why I don't do it, to be honest with you.
Right.
Because my pronunciation is horrible.
Oh, is that right?
My Japanese pronunciation is absolutely terrible. I've had my daughters laugh at me and tell me that.
Right.
So I just kind of gave up.
Yeah, just choose how you're going to butcher it. And just butcher it consistently, though, right? There you go. Yeah,
yes.
that's all we can ask.
I'm glad you appreciate that.
I know, I do appreciate it. Sincerely. So what do you want to talk about? The book? I guess we're talking about the book.
This book.
All right. Well, it took me about 6 years to write it. It was a long project. But from the time I kind of decided to do it, Dad had been promoted to Kyudan at that point by Nakazato Shugoro Sensei, and of course that was it was kind of a highlight benchmark moment, I guess, in his karate journey. And I'd been to one of our camps, and there was a lot of people that were interested in Dad, of course, and his stories. And I knew a lot of Dad's stories. I mean, I knew the stories, but I knew each story in isolation from the next, right? And so I had this I know I'd heard Dad talk about this for years, but I personally couldn't really string all these things together. I couldn't really place them in time and space to understand the stories. And some of the stories are kind of colorful, and Dad is a bit of a character. But as I personally started thinking through it, I thought, there's two aspects of his life three really that I focus on. One is, of course, karate. The other is the Marine Corps, and in those two aspects of his life, he and I, of course, we share that journey. I'm obviously still in the Marine Corps today, and so of course he brought me through my personal karate journey, and which I continue to learn and study and train myself. And so we share those two aspects of our lives, and then of course family, and there's a bit of a
pretty tight bond there.
Yeah, I can stand with a little bit of authority there, And so I thought, also as we were talking about the title of the book, we thought long and hard about, and I finally kind of settled on An Old Man's Way, because a lot of the things that draw people, I think, to Dad is how he's matured himself in karate. And so the 83-year-old, or probably then, 76, 77-year-old Doug Perry that most people know. There's a few people out there still that remember the young Doug Perry. And Dad wasn't always the sage that he comes across as today, I think, in a lot of people's eyes. And so I wanted to take somebody that people I think generally look up to as a karateka, and tell the story about his journey, because if there's an old man's way, there's necessarily a young man's way, right? And I thought, there's probably few people in the world really who could tell the story. Maybe there's a lot of people that can tell the story, but from the perspective I have as his son, probably if I were to look at all of his students, I'm probably not the oldest student, but I'm the longest student he's ever had, considering I started training when I was a toddler, and of course always under my dad's tutelage, with plenty of leeway to go out and train and do things on my own as I kind of saw fit. And then, of course, the shared Marine Corps experience that I thought. So as I looked at my own life and I looked at my dad's life, and there were parallels there where I thought that I could write these things down and take all these kind of fun stories and put them in context, make sense of them, and see how and why and where Dad's experience or collective experiences, and the people that he interacted with over the years, all who have had an influence on the karateka he has become today, and of course, by definition, has influenced the person and the karateka I have become. If I can claim to be that, but so I thought, if a few people read it, and if for nothing else, as a family, I have now been able to record that time period, that little aspect of our family.
Right.
That alone, if nobody else ever read the book, that alone would be of value to me.
Right. Yep.
And so the fact that people have shown an interest in reading it, and quite frankly have been very kind in their overlooking some of the blemishes and whatnot, it's been very humbling to see the interest in the book. So
when you decided to write this,
yeah.
How did you first talk to your dad about it? Did you say, "Dad, I'm going to write this. Would you help me?" Or was he okay with it? Was he, what do you want to do that for type deal? Or
right.
What was his response?
No, initially I expected a little bit of pushback, and because I get that on occasion on other, crazy ideas I end up having, but but he was actually pretty okay with it. And the way I approached him, I said, "Hey, Dad, I want you to write, I think it's St. Louis where they keep all the veterans records,
Okay.
And so I said, "Hey, Dad, would you mind writing," because, he's getting up there in age a little bit. And I said, "Look, I don't want to have to go through the bureaucratic red tape of trying to get your military record in my hands. I want your military record now." And so I said, "Would you mind writing the VA or wherever you have to write, get a copy of your OQR, Officer Qualification Record, OQR, your military record, and get it sent." So sure enough, a couple probably months later, and I end up with this stack of documents like this, And I said, "Hey, Dad, I want to use this. I want to interview a number of times, and I want to go." I found, Shorin-Ryu Sensei, his first, second teacher here, his first Shorin-Ryu teacher here in Okinawa. Tracked him down in Arizona.
Okay. Yep.
I called a bunch of people that knew Dad when he was a young Marine. Family. I actually called one of his best childhood friends and got in contact with his wife. He was in and out of the hospital, not feeling well, working a lot, and then he ended up passing away before I could even interview him. And I thought, you know what? I have got to get on this now because the opportunity to do it, the window of opportunity is closing. And so surprisingly, Dad was pretty cooperative. I was in the States at the time, and then in the middle of writing the book, I moved to Japan, to Tokyo, and it was a little tougher then because time zones and whatnot. So I made a little bit of progress then, but then I got back, and from Tokyo, we went back to the East Coast for a very brief period, just 2 years. And when I was in Washington, D.C. on the East Coast, I was in the same time zone as Dad. I was only a 8-hour drive from the house. And so we kind of hit it hard those 2 weeks. And the publisher, Matt Apsokardu, who's also a karateka, and has published many excellent karate books and written excellent karate books as well. He's in the same time zone, and so the stars kind of align. Now's the time to get it done. So it was kind of a full sprint to the end there.
Yeah.
So it was actually kind of funny. I finished the book, got all the copies, copies sent to me, and our house is in boxes. We're moving. We're moving to Okinawa. We're living in Virginia. Moving to Okinawa. The movers are in the house, and I get like 30 boxes of books.
Oh my gosh!
All that needed to be signed. And so here I am, just on with the house packed up. I'm moving to Okinawa in a couple of weeks, and I've got these stacks of books because the first release we did some signatures and stuff, and I was going to have my dad sign them. So I'm just sitting there in wee hours of the night, just trying to get this out before I got on the plane and came out to Okinawa. We barely made it, so it was great, and people. It was a great response from people, which I really appreciated. So that's kind of how it all started. And believe it or not, Dad was pretty cooperative. He can get a little ornery when it comes to things like that sometimes. But
you probably caught him at a good time then in his life, because I would imagine if you tried to do it 20 years ago, the response would have been, "Why?"
That's right.
Yeah. So many people are like that when they're young. I've tried to interview people actually for the podcast, and who wants to listen to me? Who wants to hear my story? well, a lot of people, you know, there's some people, you know, excuse me, that I've tried to interview, and nobody cares.
Yeah,
They do.
they do, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was a good time just because, you know, things were changing with Dad, and you know, the dojo was changing, and it was just a good time. The timing was right, I think, to do it. And the time for me personally was there, so yeah, it worked out well.
Fantastic. So you had mentioned somebody's name. I want to just give a big shout out to Matthew. I say Epsicardo.
Epsicardo. Yeah.
I don't know. Matthew, you've got a very interesting name.
Yeah.
Apsos Publishing, and I'll put a link up there. Matthew has helped several very, I would say, well-known and prominent senseis write biographies, autobiographies, or just different types of books. And then he has written a really fantastic book, Tales from the Western Generation.
Right.
Or Tales of the Western, I think, from the Western Generation. One thing I'll tell you about him, I don't know if Matthew, I'm weird about this, but this is my paperback copy of your book.
Yeah.
I'm big into the quality of paper. Because I'm sorry, but I don't really take care. I'm not this type of guy that takes especially a paperback book. You know, if I'm going to read it, I'm going to read it. I'm going to put notes. I'm going to highlight.
Get at it.
His books are quality, man.
They are.
I'll tell you, they are good. Good job, Matthew. And if anybody is interested in reaching out to him, if you've got something you want to write, he'd probably be willing to entertain you. But
no way you could get this stuff across the finish line. You know, it's one thing to write the stuff, the book, and that's almost the easy part. I had hundreds of pages of manuscript that I had written, and some of it was organized fairly well. Some of it was a little repetitive, or order didn't quite make sense, and so he helps you kind of frame it and put it in logical sense when you're so lost. I mean, the forest for the trees. You know, you get so zeroed into the thing, and you've been working 6 years, and then you have somebody fresh come and say, "Hey, this is what I think," and it's and he's an accomplished karate person, so he can appreciate what you're trying to get after.
He appreciates the subject matter.
And the biggest thing is the tiny little details. How are you going to design the cover? What's the table of contents going to look like? What's the index? Who's going to put the index together for you? Who's going to go to the Library of Congress and get your Library of Congress number for this thing? Who's actually going to go online and knows the technology behind it to put this thing together and to get it out on in front of people? I mean, you want people to read it,
right.
and that requires a little bit of marketing, and I'm not that guy,
right?
So. He
knows how to do it.
He knows how to do it. So if you are, I would say, I'm not a writer. I'm by no means, I never fancied myself an author, but if you've got an idea, everybody's got a story to tell, and everybody's story ought to be written down.
That's right.
Yep. So
good for you for writing it down, especially for your family. I think that's great. I would like to ask some questions about the book. I'm going to put the hard copy down here. I've got my soft copy here with some notes, but just some questions that I thought were funny. Some of them might be
Here
better.
We go. I'm going to get my defensive stance
better
now,
too.
Start dodging.
It's not like that. This is not an I'm not interrogating you. That's a very different time. But some of them are actually for your dad. I'll say that your father's upbringing was really interesting.
Unique,
and I think you need to read the book to find out. I mean, the guy grew up in a different time in America when things that you could do back then you could not do today.
Yeah.
I'm just going to mention one thing because it's in the book.
Okay.
I don't know if he's got the record for this. It might be something to look into. But the man was arrested 3 times in one day by the same police officer.
Yeah, that's right. No. Dad was a bit of a terror, right? Yeah, I mean, Dad was a bit of a terror, and I think that's part of the story, right?
Right. That's the young man.
That's the young man.
People need to read that and understand who the young man is and how that helped form him, right?
That's right.
So those are the interesting parts of the books, but interesting parts of the book that I think would catch you by surprise. But yeah, you have to read about it. Arrested 3 times in one day by the same police officer.
That's right.
He would hitchhike from the western part of North Carolina all the way to Myrtle Beach, which people that know how far that is, just driving in a car, it's
At 12 years old.
At 12
years old. That's right. I mean, he was adopted by the Perrys. I'm not Perry by blood, but he was adopted at a very young age, and the parents that raised him, the Perrys, were Scott and Miss Perry were very old and just didn't have the ability to really provide him much structure. They also didn't have a dime to their name. They provided a good upbringing, but they didn't have a lot of extra.
Right.
So. Yeah,
well,
so Dad was kind of on his own.
That's something we'll talk about as it relates to martial arts, the Shorin-Ryu, right, that we go through in life as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, without a doubt, that helped form your
It is
father.
kind of analogous, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Right.
A couple things I wanted to talk about with you specifically, since you're the author. There's some quotes in the book that I thought were powerful, and some different things in the book that were powerful from the karate perspective, right? Okay. There's the upbringing of your father, and then talking about the family, but then when it gets into some things that are really specific to the martial arts, I thought was interesting. There's something here I wanted to talk about on page 277,
right.
And I'll read it. Read the part from the book here is, I believe some people err in their approach to karate and fool themselves into a false sense of ability, martial maturity, and depth of knowledge by intimidating the old man's way without ever passing through the refiner's fire of the young man's way. These are your words?
Apparently, yeah. That's right. Did that strike you as...
It struck me...
A grain of truth? Or
a grain of truth. Okay. As a martial artist that hasn't been training nearly as long as your father, not as long as you, mm-hmm. and the people that you interviewed in the book to learn about your dad when he was younger, right? Mm-hmm. But that you grew up knowing. They were just right. People in your life that you grew up knowing. Some of the names in here, Mr. Hayes, mm-hmm. right? Sensei Coffin, etc. And kind of thinking about where I'm at in life and in training, it struck me. So I was just curious if I could dig into that a little bit more with you.
Yeah. Happy
about
to do that.
Your meaning behind it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I think people enjoy coming to train with Dad. They enjoy the seminars, and it's a big draw. But, what Dad teaches today has changed over time. What he teaches today is not necessarily what he would focus on 40, 30 years ago, and so I can in my mind's eye, I can see myself sitting on this in 1976 time frame, sitting on a pad of mats over in the corner of this Cherry Point dojo.
It's the year I was born.
There you go. Yeah, and I was 7-ish, so I was a young boy at the time. Young kids weren't in the dojo. I never saw a kid in the dojo until I was older. Of course, I was also living on a Marine base. Dad trained with other Marines. My first recollections of a dojo were at Bill Hayes' dojo. I think then Staff Sergeant Bill Hayes in Cherry Point, and so these are my memories of Dad. In his probably 30s, training, 20s, 30s, training. And that image of Perry Sensei, and I think the image that people who maybe have known Dad in the last 10 years or even 15 years, they're probably two very different images of the same Perry Sensei, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that we might want to look at a sensei, a teacher, and say, I want to be like that guy. But that guy got, or gal got to that place through a process, and there is and we talked about Dad's upbringing, and he was a bit of a character growing up, and didn't have a lot of structure, didn't have a lot of probably discipline instilled in him. Discipline instilled in him in some ways, but in a lack of structure and discipline in other ways. And so we talk about karate as a way of refining the character, and through this physical activity, that eventually kind of becomes this, that develops us emotionally, and in some ways spiritually. I don't mean like religious spiritually, but builds our character, and I think if we skip maybe to that old man's way, and we jump right to kind of what Dad tends to focus on now as an 83-year-old man, as opposed to the real tough, focused, hard training that was the refining process.
Yeah.
That we miss a real valuable part of the journey. And so, and that's not to say don't train with Doug Perry Sensei. That would never be my intent. But also to recognize that we all need karate is a process of self-discovery, not someone telling us about ourselves. It's a process of self-discovery, and that discovery occurs through tough, focused, hard training, where we learn about ourselves and what our limitations are, and what our what we're capable of doing, the strength of our spirit over the strength of our bodies, and those things only come through personal experience, and we all should, I think, experience those refining moments. Yep. I should say. So that's what I intended to say there.
Good.
Again, not in a way to be critical of anybody or anything like
Understood.
that. That's certainly not my intent.
I didn't read it as being critical.
Yeah.
I read it as an opinion from someone that is still refining, because you talk about
absolutely
that, right?
Yeah.
But being aware enough and having the actual sense, not the false sense, but the actual sense to know that you're still doing that. So there's the one part here I said about intimidating the old man's way.
Imitating.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Imitating, not intimidating.
Right.
Imitating the old man's way. The reason that stood out to me as well is, let's look at kata.
Right.
We see people imitating the 80-year-old sensei in kata,
correct.
Right? That was well, I'll just say it because I train in Okinawa Kempo, and people talk about this very openly, particularly with Odo Sensei,
right?
As he aged and developed some health problems and had mannerisms in his kata because of that. And then people would learn from a DVD or only see him once a year at a seminar,
right?
And they would imitate his body movement,
correct,
based off of that, right?
Right.
Completely imitating the old man's way.
Right.
Not refining it themselves, but
right.
So reading that particular sentence there, and there's much more in that actual chapter that led to that, but I just wanted to touch on that piece there without going through the entire book during this interview, right?
No, I think that's a good point. I think you probably see it all over, and we all want to imitate. I mean, we all want to see something that we aspire to. But I do think, as an example, in the kata aspect, there's no one way to do kata, and if we limit ourselves to trying to imitate someone else, then we sell ourselves short in that experience of making it our own, and then letting it develop organically within us as we get older.
I feel bad.
I don't even know what time
I feel like
it
your
is.
Family. We're still in your home here.
Yeah.
Your family, I know, is trying to be super quiet. I feel bad. It's 1:00 in the afternoon. But the old man. I'm sorry. An Old Man's Way. Doug Perry's unlikely journey through karate, war, and life by his son, Mr. Jason Perry, is available on Amazon. Anywhere else?
So the softbound is available on Amazon, and then lulu.com, LULU.com, if you're interested in a hardbound copy.
Okay.
And just do a search of An Old Man's Way, and it'll probably pop
links
up
there too. So
if not, reach out to me. I mean, there's a Facebook An Old Man's Way Facebook site as well that you can go to, and it's got some links and instructions there. Or you can message me from Facebook, and I normally respond to those. I'm not very good at it, but
it might take a day or two.
It might take a day or two. Yeah, like I said, this is not what I do for a living, so
right. I think you have a pretty important job that takes precedence in the family, but. So I'm going to set this over here. I really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for allowing me to come into your home and do the interview.
Well, let me take a minute and say thank you to you. I have listened to every one of the episodes. I enjoy them. I don't know a lot of the people you've interviewed, but as I've listened to the interviews, it's like I always find this connective tissue between between the people you interview and my own experiences, and I really enjoy what you're doing. So keep it up, and thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I do it. I started it out of a hobby, something to do for fun, and it still is. I have a full-time job too as well, and I've met some great people doing it. And it's just connective tissue, like you said. This person refers me to this person, refers me to this person, or I meet somebody, and that's how it works. So you and I have more projects we're working on.
We do. Yeah.
Put them out later, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and let's enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to the Okinawa Karate Podcast. As always, I am Josh Simmers, coming to you from the birthplace of karate, Okinawa, Japan.